Hi there, it's Jonathan Quayle again for another edition of the Lifebuilder Inspirational Quote, and today is a reflection. So the quote I've chosen is particularly relevant. Something came up for me today. It's very much about judgment, being judged, and taking offense, which I'll reflect on a little bit later, but in this video. But first, I just want to put the quote out there. It's a very, very powerful one by a guy called Mooji, who's a Jamaican spiritual teacher. He runs spiritual retreats, and he's been voted the 37th most influential spiritual person in the world, which is kind of a joke, really. They have these lists for people who are supposedly, more spiritually influential, because spirituality kind of is not about lists and status and rank at all. His quote was, "When one is without ego, one becomes immediately free of all personal judgments and perceives life and the world with divine eyes and mind. Nothing is offensive to them, and they remain in perfect serenity and peace always." I love that quote because it sets the bar where it should be, very, very high, saying any kind of judgment is not spiritual. If you really want to be enlightened, you have to let go of all personal judgments and taking offense. So it's a good barometer, not from any ego perspective, because we want to be ranked as enlightened and seen as enlightened. It's really just our own internal barometer to say, well, how much am I judging? How much am I choosing to take offense? Because when I do that, who suffers? I do. I suffer because I'm now offended. I'm now angry. I'm now upset. Irrespective of whatever anyone else is doing. You've disturbed your peace of mind by choosing, because it is a choice, to judge and choosing to get offended. And there are many things in this world that can offend you. In fact, you can be offended almost on a continuous basis if you choose to. So judgment is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of spiritual growth, and just a barometer for your own spiritual growth. If you're judging and you're choosing to get offended, that you're out of alignment with spirit. That must be the ego. Irrespective of what's provoking it. So there's we all have things that push our buttons, and we all think that we're justified in judging. But in the end, we're not, because in the end, none of these things, these manifestations of separation, really exist in the divine mind. And if we want to merge with that mind, we have to be willing to overlook all errors, and our judgment of those errors, and all offense that we take through the little self, the personal self, and find a place of perfect peace and serenity, as Mooji says, where we simply cannot be moved. And this is the lesson of all the masters through the ages, that we can find this unshakable peace, irrespective of what happens. So whether we're being physically attacked, even murdered, even killed. Jesus was a very good example of that. He was killed on the cross, and yet he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And I would guess he was still at peace in his own mind. Although his body was in pain, his spirit would have been at peace, knowing that all is well, and that actually he's going back to his Father. He's leaving the mortal domain. So what triggered this was a disagreement that I had earlier today with a spiritual teacher. He also teaches spirituality, and he got offended with something that I did. And there was words said, there was raised voices, there was anger, and I just said to him, "But you got to look at that, because if you're choosing to get offended, you're choosing to give offense. When you take offense, you give offense, and that can only be the little self. That can only be the ego, irrespective of what I've done. What I did, I don't think was particularly bad in any way. It was simply a disagreement. We had a different view on what content to put out on social media, on a WhatsApp group, and can just agree to disagree. But he chose to get offended, And I had to look at my own reactions. Was I offended? Possibly, slightly. But when these things come up, when judgment comes into our lives and our minds, whether we are judging or whether we're being judged, because I was being judged, it's really the same thing, and that's a very powerful principle to remember. So whether you judged or you're being judged, it's the same thing. Judgment separates us from oneness. Judgment separates us from the divine, and it's our job to let it go, irrespective of what's happening. So that's my reflection for today. I hope it's valuable. Just start to notice in the next day, couple of days, how much you judge and how much you take offense, even slight offense, and what someone's saying, what someone's doing. And if you're really honest, you'll probably notice that happens many times a day. And the first step to becoming more enlightened and finding more inner peace, because that's really the point, is to start to become aware of these judgments and systematically just choose to let them go and go, I don't want to see that. I don't want to judge. I don't want to have an opinion about this. I don't want to be right. I want to be happy, as the Course in Miracles says. I prefer to be happy rather than right. I prefer peace of mind. And you start putting that first. And little by little, your judgments and this little self, the ego that judges and chooses to get offended, starts to dissolve, starts to go away, because it can only survive as long as you choose to judge and get offended. If you'd like to explore this topic in a little bit more detail, I'm running a Course in Miracles discussion session this Sunday from 1:30 to about 3 in Huddle Park Golf Course. There's a nice area there where we do it. Or you can join online if you can't make it in person. So you can go to ACIM Illuminations. It's ACIMilluminations.com. You can see that URL on the screen to find out more information and book your place for the online session, 1:30 to 3 o'clock on Sunday. Or if you'd like to join in person, just drop me an email, jono@lifebuilder.com, and I will give you the details of where we're going to meet. So thanks for listening. Hope to connect with you maybe on the weekend. Hope today's reflection and quote has been insightful, valuable, and that you can apply it. Because if you can really start letting go of judgment and letting go of any tendency to get offended, that is a major sign of spiritual progress, and you'll be a lot happier for it. So thank you for listening. Hope to catch you on the weekend. Otherwise, for my next it'll be an inspirational quote and life hack on Monday. So decided to do these twice a week, just because I have too little time to do one every day, and I wanted to create some kind of structure. So I'll do one reflection and one life hack per week, and I think that's manageable for me. Thanks for listening. Hope to catch you soon. Have a great evening. Bye for now.